Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another OSR Tabletop live stream with myself, Richard DM Bluddworth of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I know I announced kind of late that I was probably going to start a few minutes earlier because I just want to double check a few things here. And let me turn down the volume there. I'm going to be testing out a few new things here. So I'm going to try to stream a video and kind of parse it out over the time because this video is, or this live stream is by request by a frequent commentator or commenter on my channel. And he asked for my impressions of and a response of, and I will put the banner up there. So I will be responding to Secrets of D&D Dungeon Mastering with Chris Perkins. So this was on the D&D YouTube channel, and Chris Perkins was being interviewed. And I had not at the time when I was asked to take a look at this had seen the video myself. So immediately after the request, I went and I listened through to the video. It's about a 53 minute long video. So I listened to it once, pretty much in depth, and then I hit a few points and re-listened to those segments that I really want to talk about. And what I have parsed out so far is about 14 points from this 53 some odd minute video in response. So I've never done it this way. So I am going to be sharing screen, hitting just the timestamps that I am going to directly talk about, and hopefully that doesn't cause a problem with the with copyright and everything. It should fall within fair use and critiquing and such. So we'll see how that goes as well. So I already have a comment in here. So let's see. And Rational Ginger, hey, how's it going? Well, I'm sorry about that. That's kind of weird because I did post this a couple days ago. So that's one thing that I've modified in what I do is I try to get these things up as soon as I possibly can, and then that way you have plenty of notice, several days notice. Hello, O'Neill, how's it going? Good to see you. And yeah, I'll wait for a few more people to jump in beforehand before I kind of jump right into the topic at hand. Some other announcements, just really quick. So I have my first convention of, or possibly my last convention of 2023, I should say, is ShireCon, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow evening, I will be running Horror from the Mound. So this is a Robert E. Howard story written in 1932, published in Weird Tales, and I will be using Weird Frontiers to run it. So I've bought a whole slew of materials and everything ready for this thing to go. First time running that game system. So I'm kind of nervous about that, but I'm willing to wing certain aspects of the game system in order for it to actually work well, or tweak, I should say, rather than wing. I tweaked, or I will be tweaking some of the game system in order for it to run very smoothly at a convention table. So really excited about that. And then the following day, Saturday, I'm just playing in a whole bunch of games. Quick stream, yikes. No, I basically after you sent me that text or whatever it was to look at this, I put it up. So this has been up for about a week. maybe, or at least 5 days, I'd say, unless you mean quick stream, like only an hour. I don't know. It depends on how long it actually takes me to go through this. So we shall see. I might have to switch to my my headset once my wife comes up to go to bed. So we'll see how that goes. I thought the chat only said 1 hour stream. Yeah, it maybe it could run a little bit longer. I got to kind of play it out and see how it goes. I want to make sure that we cover everything that I'm looking to cover, and at the same time respect the fact that my wife does have to get up early for work tomorrow. So, and this was starting a little bit later. I started this one at 9 o'clock because I had a previous commenter for my a previous stream that was like, oh, I always miss these because and that's when I was starting at 7, because I guess he was just missing them or missing the start of them. So I wanted to change it up a little bit and start a little bit later in order to give everybody an opportunity to pop in. So without further ado, what I am going to be covering today is a response. Oh, I just clicked off of it. I am responding to Secrets of D&D Dungeon Mastering with Chris Perkins. So this is a live stream response to a video that appeared on the D&D channel, the YouTube channel, and I have put this link into the description so you can watch the full video on your own as well. And I encourage you to do so because I was really quite surprised at how much of it I really did agree with, and and it kind of surprised me that Chris Perkins and I we have very similar takes on certain things, and I was kind of surprised with that. And he is he is a much better dungeon master in theory, in his dungeon mastering theory, that that I was expecting. So it really did change my overall impression of him as a content specialist for Dungeons and Dragons, because it really was, and I really do recommend that you take a look at it and see for yourself. But there were some points that I was like, no, absolutely not. So of course we're going to disagree on a few things. So without further ado, and let's see the comment in there. He is better in his own mind. Well, yeah, I mean, I think everybody is to a certain extent. We always think we're slightly better than we might actually be. But listen, I'm going to give. There are at least 5 points of the 14 that I bring up that I was like, yep, that's exactly. I'm in the same spot. Like I absolutely agree, or I'm already doing this. And then there were parts that I was like, nope, there's just no way. And then the rest are kind of in betweenish, kind of neutral on it. But I thought that there were important points that stood out for me. So let's get right into it. I'm going to be switching back and forth between sharing the screen, and I'm going to be coming off of this and going to the actual video, and I'm just going to be hitting the timestamps that I put out there. So let's go with this here. So I am going to start right here with Secrets of Dungeon Mastery, and I'm going to run it. Let me know in chat if the sound of the video is not coming through.
So without further ado, first question is, what is a dungeon master? A world builder, B, a storyteller, C, a referee, or D, all of the above?
I feel like D.
All right, so not bad. He's going to come out and he's going to lay out several points that what are the roles that a dungeon master plays.
D?
D is the correct answer.
Perfect.
Yes,
I
but
have survived.
it's more than that. A dungeon master is also an actor, a director, a teacher, and an improviser.
Now, some of these are kind of a stretch. And I mean, when it comes to director, I think he kind of falls a little bit off the mark. An actor, just because you're controlling the NPCs and you're not really acting. I think that there's a little bit too much emphasis on the critical role type presentations to game mastery coming from them, and so I certainly wouldn't have. And this also sounds very theaterish to me as well. Teacher, I mean, yes, I guess you're there to teach people how to play the game if they've never played it before. Improviser, without a doubt, you have to be ready to improvise, because players will always throw you a curveball. So I'm trying to keep track of both things at the same time. So let's continue on to the next bullet point. So far introduction, okay, there's things here and there that I can quibble over. I'm going to jump up to 302 when he starts talking about world building. That's close enough.
Campaign setting to think about. If you're thinking about it on the world scale, it can be quite daunting, which is why my tip for world building is start small. It can be very tempting to bite off more of the campaign than you can chew, or more of the campaign that the players will even experience.
Right.
And DMs are busy people. They have lives. They don't have infinite amount of time to get their setting off the ground. But if you start small, you have a better chance of actually creating content that the players will experience and use and enjoy. And by small, I mean, maybe your campaign starts at a village. So detail the village, define some of the personalities of the NPCs who live there, flesh out some of the locations that are important. And then if there are areas around the village, like maybe there's a dungeon nearby or a haunted castle or a ruined tower on a hilltop, these close by locations can serve as the starting places for the characters to explore in their early adventures. That is enough of a campaign right there to get things off the ground.
There you go. And I absolutely agree with him there. Without a doubt, that is absolutely true. I do the same exact thing. I start off my campaigns very small. Start off in a village. My current Castles and Crusades campaign followed that to the T. They started off in a small village. They've made a few NPC contacts, and then they started expanding out, doing little short adventures, usually one session, one shot adventures, then returning back to their guild house, and where they can heal up, find additional information, maybe improve some of their equipment and such, and then they go back out again. All right, and so they only need to come into contact with a small number of NPCs to start off, and then it will start to expand and grow outwards from that experience. So he is dead on with this, as far as this is how you should start off as a brand new dungeon master or game master, no matter what the system that you're actually using. These are important things to keep in mind, so that you don't overburden yourself. As he was saying, you only need to think about something really very small, and as you become more and more comfortable as a game master, you're going to ever expand this thing. I like to have my players kind of maintain their own journals of their experiences and the the NPCs that they've encountered and the monsters that they've encountered and the information, interesting information for them as they're going along, and that becomes the player character's experience. And so, and they can always refer back to that, or I don't have a problem reminding them of some of the things that their character specifically experience. And I'll get more into detail with some of his other points. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to take a look at some of the comments really quick here. So hello, Paul. Good to see you. An actor is an improviser unless there's a script. Yeah, I mean, but he's talking about the game master being an improviser. So basically, when the players decide to go left instead of right, where you might have been kind of anticipating them to go in, that's when you have to improvise. Now, he's going to give a point in there that I'm absolutely opposed to. But we'll get to that point in a second. So I'm going to jump ahead now to mark 10:30. So 10 minutes and 30 seconds in. So nothing he really said in between those 2 points is something that I was going to really focus on. So we're going to get into when he's talking about storytelling tip: talk less and listen more.
Why?
I'm afraid to ask.
Let me just come back a little bit.
Tend to be a violent bunch. The DM will plan stories that cater to that.
Oh, I came back
type,
way
whereas
too
if they're
far.
more investigative or more into role playing, yes.
All right.
Listen more. Why?
I'm afraid to ask. I was just instructed to talk less.
Because you do want the players to be invested in the story you're telling, and the more they talk, the more invested they are. But also, as a DM, your players will do a lot of your work for you. If you just listen to their interplay and their discussions, they will fill your head with ideas. They will give you things that you or ways to take the story that you didn't even think of yourself. And being a good listener, you can plan what's going to happen while they're talking.
It is my favorite.
All right. So the issue I have with this, or it was the first thing I thought about was that, are the players talking or are the characters talking to one another? All right. And there's a huge distinction between the two. If he's talking about just building off of what the players are talking about to each other, and that could be talk about game mechanics, that could be talk about, all of these other things, I think that that's a wrong way of thinking about it. If the player characters are talking to one another and they're role playing that and they're having this conversation amongst the player characters, that's something that the game master should build off of, not the players. So I always try to encourage my players to separate themselves from the characters as much as possible. And so when they're thinking and acting and talking in game, they're all doing it from their player character's perspective. So let's see. Let's get to some of your points here. I agree more with Abe about, from talking about games on storytelling. The GM is not a storyteller, and I agree with that as well. I mean, collectively, everyone at the table is creating a story, but it is a story that is all being left behind as you're moving forward. Like, you don't know where it's going necessarily. So you don't know where exactly it's going to go, but you already know what has happened. So you're kind of leaving the story behind you as you're moving forward, if that makes any sense to you. And so that's that was one of those points. Like I said, I didn't exactly, yes, an emergent story. Thank you, Thank you, Cal. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. That's the kind of storytelling that is supposed to be taking place at the table. It's emergent. This is why I kind of, I discourage players from having these huge backstories. If you have a first level character, you should have no more than one paragraph, and I pretty much use that measure as like for every level that you are, you should have like one paragraph that kind of summarizes that particular level for you. So for a brand new character, let's say a first level character, all I really need to know is where you come from, what was some of your like family background kind of thing, like if you have any secondary skills or non proficiency skills or something like that, then where is your family background and what skills comes from that, and why did you become an adventurer, why are you adventuring? And that's it for a first level character. You can encapsulate that in 3 sentences. Then from first level to second level, you can probably boil that down to one standard size paragraph, 5 to 7 sentences long, or possibly longer. It really depends on how quickly those levels are going to come by. So, so like Cal said as well, emergent, that is what you're looking for. Let's see. I need to look that word up. Does it mean anecdote? Oh, okay. They're talking about the hat, I guess. The fact that he wears a hat. Although some are using even that, the term seems to be much more modern word salad for TTRPGs. You are emergent. Yeah, that I mean, to me, emergent story means just that. It's a story that is evolving as you're going through it. Um, I don't know of any other word salad versions of that. Telling about an event after it happened, like a recap video. Yeah, yeah, and it's and like I said, the not exactly knowing where it's going to go is what makes it emergent as well. Pretentious over explaining of simple gaming. Possibly. It depends on how they're doing it. Like I said, I was fairly impressed with Chris Perkins. He has a much better understanding than Kevin Crawford does. So I will give him that he has greater understanding than I was expecting. So let's move on. So we are at 11 minutes. So now I am going to fast forward to 33:57. And like I said, you can watch this whole video. Um, so they spent a lot of time just like yapping back and forth, and nothing really stood out to me until 33:57. So I will try to get it. Let's see, I'll go to 33:50 and let's see what he's about to talk about here. So I'm looking for when he starts talking about fast forwarding, which this was something that I was like, no, don't do that.
To hang out in town and are actively sort of not striving to go where they know they need
Okay,
to.
let me back this up a little.
I have been challenged on this one before.
Right.
If you actually sort of physically get into a hunkered down position like a rock,
He'll get to the point.
you sort of expand your chest maybe a little.
Yeah.
That could affect your performance acting. So maybe becoming the rock is actually a viable thing after all.
Perfect.
The DM is also a director. But what I mean by director, as opposed to storyteller, is a director needs to keep the story moving and know when things are getting bogged down, and then kind of reorient the invisible camera, as it were. And the director has to know where to shine the camera at any given time. So my tip is, let your players help steer the adventure, but when the fun is gone, move on. Right. One practical way I do this is, let's say I have my session planned. There's a destination in mind, or a conflict brewing, or something that's about to happen, and my players are dragging their heels in, or they're tangled up in a discussion that isn't going anywhere, or they're just content to hang out in town and are actively sort of not striving to go where they know they need to go. One of the things I do is I will just fast forward. So they're lagging around in the town, they're dickering with their shopping, they're arguing about this, that, and the other thing. I'll just say, the next day, you're on the road heading to the dungeon.
Okay. Absolutely not. That is, for lack of a better term, that is railroading. The way you get your players re-engaged with the adventure at hand is that you let the players start picking up clues or cues that that something that they were supposed to take care of is now getting out of hand. All right. You generate a consequence for them dilly-dallying or running on a side quest or whatever. All right. Rather than just fast track them and put them towards the dungeon that you were. No, how is that improvising? That is not improvising. That is railroading them towards what you created. All right. And sometimes the players just aren't going to do that on your timetable, but you should create a consequence for that. All right, because that is what is going to make the world a living world, a living and breathing world. The fact that, yeah, you decided not to go and take care of the goblin encampment that has been raiding, some of the villages on the outskirts of the main, the main city here. But now, because you've decided to hang out in the tavern for 3 days, now some people have, additional caravans have been sacked and additional people have been harmed. And now the local magistrate who kind of tasked you to take care of this, maybe even hired you to go do it, is now pretty pissed off that that you didn't do it. All right. And now the players are going after the fact to try to take care of something. You create a consequence that gets them back on track, or have somebody else do it, but now they have harmed their reputation in that place as a result of it. All right. Because now somebody else had to go take care of it. So the railroading is never, hey, that's great. That's, that's a good idea. So, so Chris would find my player going back and burning down his town if forced to the dungeon before I chose. You don't want this town anymore. Fine. Well, just have the dungeon denizens do that for you. If it's the dilly-dallying on the other thing. But yes, Cal, it is definitely perhaps heavy railroading. I know that Magnificent Devil said sounds like soft railroading. It's railroading. So, like I said, not everything he put out here was a gem. That's for darn sure. So I'm going to go to the next. I'm going to go to the next clip here and see. So I want to jump to 3451. We're almost there. let's go to here. And I'll let it run into it.
Some players of mine will sort of go, whoa, 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 okay, we're on the road, but can I just go back to the town for a quick second, or just flash back to buying some carrots for our mule, Charlie?
Yeah.
And I'll go, yeah, you got the carrots. Now you're on the road heading to the, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just basically cut the movie and then jump to the next scene.
Perfect.
Question. My characters don't want to complete the quest laid out before them. What should I do? A, provide additional motivation. B, surface a more tempting quest. C, let the players direct the story for a while. Just sit back, whatever. D, tell the players you have nothing else prepared.
I mean, all of the above potentially. If you're not into improv and this is the only thing that you've got left there at the end, yeah, I think that's a very fair thing to say. Like, you were not prepared for another avenue.
No, absolutely not. Never tell the players that you have nothing else planned, that you're incapable of improvising. You were going to indicate that you are not, you're not quick on your feet. You're not able to respond to their doing things. If you're not following this railroad, then then I don't know what to do with you. It's just bad advice. All right. D should have been never happens. Not all of these are possible legitimate answers. D was absolutely the wrong answer to put out there. Let's see. So let's see. Cal says, yeah, like the party needs to help me make the story, I mean, to a certain extent, they're going to, but again, the story isn't what is about to happen. More so, if the story is as it's happening and what has happened. So not going on the planned adventure is still the story. It's going to create a different story path than what was planned, but still it is a story. Okay, so let me get back to this here. And I am going to jump to 4117. So he's going to start talking about 4117, I said. So let's go to 40. Let's try 48. So question one of my players has trouble deciding what their character should do on their turns in combat. How do I get them to play faster? Use an egg timer, skipping the player if they aren't fast enough. I wouldn't necessarily use an egg timer here, but and I'll let him go through his thing too. Signal your exasperation for by rolling your eyes and sighing loudly. Suggest one or two good options and make the initiative order visible to your players. So I am going to let him talk a little bit about this, and then I will jump in and put my own comment in there.
I think initiative order is really good to see for a lot of folks. Providing options once it's ground to a halt. Not a fan of the other ones. Rolling your eyes, come on.
Yes, the first two options are not great.
Yeah.
No, the first option was fine, other than the egg timer. If the player character is indecisive in what they're going to be doing, there's nothing wrong with having them lose initiative, and then they will eventually become accustomed to the fact that they have to pay attention when it's not their turn to what is going on, and then be ready to act. All right. It's normally not something that is so convoluted, so complex that you can't determine what your next action is going to be. I know that 5e is a complicated, a much more complicated system than virtually all the other OSR versions of Dungeons and Dragons. The earlier editions of Dungeons and Dragons are less layered with an action economy, but you should still be paying attention, and that's something that he doesn't mention here. I'll let him continue going.
I don't think you want to put added pressure of a timer on the players and on the player in that moment, because they'll just freeze.
Yeah.
B, rolling your eyes, that's not good. That's
No. You're just a jerk.
You're just a jerk. Suggesting one or two options is often great. Like,
no, never. Do not suggest what the players should be doing with their characters. You are basically railroading them, on a micro level. You're telling them what to do. They're going to always take your suggestion, because they know that the GM is not going to guide them the wrong way.
Just a reminder, oh, by the way, you have cantrips, you can just do those, or you haven't used your fireball yet.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Little prompts can help a DM or help a player narrow down the possibilities and come to a decision. And making the initiative order visible is helpful, because if the players can see it, they know when their turn is coming up, and they can start thinking about what their character is doing before their turn actually arrives.
Mm-hmm.
You see, he's right on that point. However, he should have added to that, not just that you're looking at when your order is, in a turn, and you can start thinking about what you're going to be doing. You should be paying attention to what the other characters are doing to potentially modify what you're going to do. If you're getting ready if all you're thinking about is, I'm going to shoot my magic missile at the ogre on the right, and yet the ranger has already killed the ogre on the right, because he was firing a bow and he's going to go first, if you're not paying attention to what the other players are doing with their characters, you're still going to look to cast your magic missile at the ogre. And I, as a game master, would even let the magic user still cast that spell, all right, and hit hit that ogre with a magic missile, even though the ogre was already toppling down, taking its last breath from the arrow that the ranger just put into his chest. And that would be the consequence for not paying attention to what the other characters are doing. All right, so let me get caught back up with your comments here. So let's see. Disagree. Always yell the players when there's nothing left. If you finish a module and not ready to start a new series, you go from I'm not really sure what that. Sometimes I lose track of where people are talking about. I don't know what specifically L is disagreeing with. Always tell your players when nothing is left. Are you talking about when nothing's left to kill? Or nothing's left to do? I don't know. Players aren't going to care that an NPC or two is killed or angry at them as a consequence of their inaction, especially if they're having fun playing shopping simulator. I'd make them eventually care. I'd make them be like, oh, wow, this is really, you know what? We're not getting hired to do adventures in this town, and we're going to have to move on, or we're not going to get the same kind of reward that we would have been offered if we had a higher reputation. I would even homebrew and create a reputation system for the player characters that they're going to want to maintain, and in order to keep that going forward. And in older editions, like AD&D First Edition has a rating system that adjusts the amount of cost it would be to level up. All right. And, if they have a series of really ineffective sessions, let's say, or a failed mission on top of that, a failed quest on top of that, it's going to make leveling up, the cost of leveling up, 2, 3, even up to 5 times more expensive, because their ratings are so low. And it was usually rated on like a 0 to 5, if I recall correctly. I was using that initially in my AD&D campaign until the players were consistently, and I mean for weeks on end, session after session after session, not making those kind of, mental errors, and pretty much staying on their own goals, not necessarily still the, like the main quest kind of goals, but they would come up with their own little goals here and there. And as long as they were still moving forward on what they were looking to do, they were still accruing successes along the way. Now, the main quest might still be rolling along, and they can't just ignore it forever. Otherwise, they're going to start picking up info that things are going south in different spots that they've neglected, and then they will shift in and take care of those, and then get back to doing whatever they're looking to do. So it's very important for there to be consequences for inaction, in my opinion. And I think that it is so important because it makes the world feel like it's a living, breathing world. Yes, that's true. Might have undeveloped Texas. Yeah, just wilderness, just open wilderness with not very much to do in them. Skipping someone who is dithering too much, then skipping them in any order is fine. Yeah, the egg timer seems a little bit passive aggressive, though. Yeah, I wouldn't use the egg timer. That's kind of, like you say, that's kind of unnecessary. But you can tell the player, we'll get back to you. You can go out of the order, instead of missile, magic, melee. What you could do is you could say, well, you can hold off on your missile weapon until after the magic and the melee to kind of clean up house and everything. I would allow players to do that. But see, what they're doing is they're paying attention to what the other player characters are doing, when they make that decision. User caller, problem solved. Exactly. I mean, that's what they should be communicating with each other during that. Does he? I don't know if Max uses an egg timer. The countdown clock. They can't roll back to older versions after they condemned them from containing banned wrong thing. Yes, of course. Well, nothing's canon prior to 2014, and they're virtually even making that non-canon as well. So basically, yeah, nothing's nothing that was done in the past is ever going to be accepted. Yep, it's absolutely true. You shouldn't. I don't think Chris ever played D&D any edition. I saw him acquisitions. Well, from it's fourth edition that I think is his primary. Is fourth edition. I think that he still runs fourth edition. Now, I have no experience playing or running fourth edition, but that is definitely his his wheelbox. Now I don't know if he played third or anything prior to that. I don't know how old he is, but he certainly looks like he's probably in his late 40s, early 50s. So, you know, he probably started around second, but maybe not. I'm not sure. But he's definitely a fourth edition person. He runs fourth edition. And that's what Acquisitions Inc. was, for the most part, was based off of his fourth edition campaign. Hold action on the character and continue the initiative order. They don't know what to do after the last initiative number. They forfeit the round. Yeah, I mean, if they're still trying to figure out what the heck they're going to do, yeah, they lose initiative. That's nothing wrong with that. To be fair, Acquisitions is designed as a performance first. I'm possibly so as well. Yes, it's true, Rational Ginger. They should. I mean, that's why I'm not a big fan of 5e. I think that there's too much, even at first level. There's too much to remember at first level. That's why, basic, D&D basic, especially like 1983, the basic is just such an incredible book to start people off with. They only have to worry about levels 1 to 3. They only have access to levels 1 to 3 in there. And, it just gives them enough time to really learn their class or their class's race, for those, for those looking to do that. And, yeah, it's just a much better system to teach somebody new. Then, when they get to like 5e, it's a little bit less daunting, I guess. But, I still find that 5e just has too much at first level to think about. You have to have your character sheet in front of you for 5e. You don't necessarily have to do that for earlier editions. Not even advanced D&D. Do you really need to have that unless you're a spellcaster or whatever? But, for the most part, you really don't need to have your character sheet in front of you you're certainly not referring to your character sheet all that often when you're a first level character in AD&D. I'm sure he runs a private game though, L. I'd be surprised that he doesn't run his own personal game. He has to. He might think so. Like I said, I mean, he made some points here that I was like, yeah, that's true. But yep, any game designer thinks that they're better than they actually are. I don't have the time to carrot and stick these people to go on an adventure. If they can't get aboard one of the half dozen things I have prepared, I'm gonna bounce. All right, and I mean that's certainly your like if you're creating half a dozen things that they've got to pick up one of the half dozen. I've never encountered that. I hope you haven't. But yeah, that's a lot to have them reject all of those things. You might just need instead of bouncing them. Instead of bouncing yourself, if you're the game master, you're the commodity. They're not. You'll be able to find other players. All right, so let's get to the next point. Let me just see if anything really stands out. All right, I'm gonna go to the next thing. So initiative, improv 4212. So let me jump to 4212 when he starts talking about improv. Oh, he's almost there. All right.
Finally, one of the biggest roles of a dungeon master and one of the hardest is the DM as improviser. Improv is basically mental gymnastics.
Yeah.
It's what a DM is basically doing all the time, while they're doing everything, all those other roles, they are also improvising all the time. And it can be very exhausting to keep up with several players. Each of them are doing things that are not planned. It can be taxing and it can be difficult, and it requires exercise and practice, which is why my tip is, hey, improv gets easier the more you play. And until then, embrace the unexpected.
Right.
Often DMs will use a technique called yes and, where player says, I want to do this wacky thing. The DM says yes, and here's what you have to do, or here's potentially where this might go, that kind of thing. Another option is like, no, but you can't do this, but you can maybe do this other thing, or you can try it, but it's going to be really, really hard. Another technique for DMs is what my colleague Mackenzie DeArmas calls embracing the loading wheel.
Okay.
Which is, while it's true that improv gets easier the more you play, and that it's good that until then you embrace the unexpected, you as a DM also have license to pause and think and take a few seconds, maybe up to 10 seconds or longer, to react.
Okay. And again, that was a point of agreement. It's something I just recently did a video on this about improvising, and I essentially said the same thing. There's nothing wrong with you pausing it. Sorry, give me a few moments. You might have to plan a couple things out because, like I said, they decided to go left instead of right, and now you have to throw something together and create it. That's why I so opposed what he said earlier when he was like, "Oh, you could just tell the players I don't have anything else planned." No, how you're when you get to improvise over here, you're setting it up for you to have the time to pause, think about what the players are looking to do, and then react to it. And that includes generating something different that you hadn't planned on. That is, so he contradicts himself in this. So if I go back to that earlier point, at 34:51-ish, when he says, don't ever, I said, don't ever admit that you have nothing planned. Just improv. I knew this was coming up. And, at this point, so he gets improv right here, but he doesn't suggest it earlier on. So that's, why it stood out to me. So anyway, let's take a real quick look. Let's see. Judd, let's see. Judd, hey, how's it going? Players need to be proactive and engage themselves. Yes. Yeah, players do need to be involved. And if they're not, then it's going to be boring for them. And it's boring for the game master as well, or the dungeon master if you're playing D&D. It's, it's best if everyone is engaged. So let's see. Yes and no, but are from actual improv acting. Let's see. Was that? No, just say no. The character can't mount the hostile owlbear dambards. Oh, that's coming up later. He was talking about that in the thing when the player wants to do this. I probably just skipped over that. It's part of the improv point that I think he was making, but I didn't point that out directly. Let's go to the next one is 4523. So this is a totally different conversation here. And he's talking about what do you do? Let's see if I'm cutting it close to the point here.
And that is often a good thing.
And even narratively, there's some of my favorite movies are like all of this effort to get.
All right,
And then
hold on.
another creature sort of arise from its innards is also a great example.
Yes.
Or a swarm of creatures, as the case
Oh.
may be.
Right.
And like
Here we go. So a character, the characters are about to kill the villain in one round. How do you avoid the unexpected anticlimax? So give the villain some extra hit points or protract the death. With its dying breath, have the villain summon a greater threat. Have the villain assume a new form after its first form is destroyed, or don't. Just enjoy the anticlimax. So I'll let him finish off this here.
I think it's okay to enjoy the anticlimax. And the reason I feel that way is players often are overjoyed when their characters feel badass.
Yeah.
And if they just pound that villain down in one round, they will remember that. That'll become part of their party's story. And that is often a good thing.
And even narratively, there's some of my favorite movies are like all of this effort to get to this one villain, and the villain is gone in seconds.
Yes.
Sometimes that's very satisfying to me because I've
Yes.
seen this narrative before. But yeah, like that moment where you just like end the villain immediately, that makes you feel like the hero.
Right.
All right, so I pretty much agree with him there. Once in a while, it shouldn't happen very often, but once in a while, you're even surprised by how quickly, as the game master, you're surprised at how quickly they just steamrolled something, and it could just be a series of really lucky rolls that occur. I've seen in my campaign, they essentially killed a dragon with a critical hit that was going to have it die within 4 rounds because of a long shot that it had. It was using a critical hit table, and the dragon was going to die in 4 rounds. That's the kind of thing that can happen. But and it's really phenomenal. Like, whew, you know what? We only took 2 breath weapons from this thing, almost killed 3 of our players. Player characters, I should say, but luckily we managed to, hit it with this critical hit, and then it got hit with another crit on top of that, the next round afterwards. So it's sometimes that's just the way it goes, and he's agreeing with that. He was like, yeah, you know what? Sometimes that's the way things goes, and now he's getting ready to kind of flip the script on that, and I'll let just run to that point. So I'm looking at around 4634. So I'm going to let it go for this
Characters
minute.
are about to die. How do I avoid a TPK?
Okay.
A, let him die. The dice giveth and the dice taketh away.
Yeah.
B, have the enemy show mercy or make a tactical error.
Okay.
C, stage a timely rescue. Or D, divine intervention.
All those are viable. I avoid divine intervention, though I do always like to have a plan B. If the characters do die, I like to have a secondary adventure that has to do with them all dying. As if maybe there is a curse on them, or there is a deity that wants to intervene, but at a cost.
Yes, so I actually ruled out the let them die.
You see, and here again, he's kind of contradicting his earlier point when he says, hey, you know what? It's really cool, sometimes if the players, one shot the big bad guy. And here he's saying the opposite really is that, well, if a TPK happens just because of, unlucky consequences or unlucky circumstances that arise from a combat, then you got to have it both ways. You have to have, if you're going to want one and allow for one, then you should allow for the other one. For him to strike that through is kind of it's counter to the point he was making on the opposite direction. So yeah, sometimes you just have to let it happen, let it occur. Now there's other things that you can do, as far as when you do suffer total party kill, and I'll probably save that for another video. But but for the most part, I think for him to strike through that one is just wrong.
But I actually prefer your answer, that it can be viable if you have a plan post death,
Right.
to keep the campaign going or to keep the players engaged in the campaign, either as their characters or in some new form. Maybe they're playing ghosts for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe they're playing vampires for a while.
When they get trapped in the afterlife
Exactly. So
bureaucracy.
So
Yeah.
actually, even though I ruled out let them die, that could be a viable option if the campaign can survive it.
Yeah.
You see, and that was a second point that I was going to make here about the campaign. If all the players die, that our player characters die, that doesn't mean that the campaign is over. That means that the story arc for that player party is over, but the campaign still keeps on going. The campaign is bigger than the characters. All right, the campaign is the world setting, the timeline that they're working on, the events that are taking place. And so now, when those player characters are removed from that equation, new set of player characters can pick up where they left off, perhaps, or pick up someplace in some other location, but they're still seeing those events that are taking place elsewhere. And so that's let me get this that comment off of there for a second, and there we go. Sorry about that, I have left that comment up too long. So that's where I would go with that, is let the campaign keep on moving forward, because it doesn't require the same group of characters to be still playing along with it. Let's see what some comments are here. So, good job. Good job, you killed the villain. You still have to escape the dungeon, remaining monsters, and get out, loot before someone else does. Yep, and that's true too. Players can smell grudge monsters from a mile away. Yeah. Their use and railroading are two ways GMs can act out. Yeah. Let's see. What plan do you need? Play more than one party at a different levels in your world. Yeah. Again, it's not just about, Chris wants a campaign to keep going, so no one says, so next week, Charles. No, actually, Chris Perkins is, and they believe in the 6-session campaign, and then it comes to an end, and they start fresh. He has a very small view of what a campaign is. He doesn't think in the broader terms of the campaign as the world that you've created, and the player characters are just actors as in taking actions, not actors like Hollywood actors. They're actors in that broader world. Multiple characters seem to be a regional thing. When Ars Magica dropped, my group warmed to it more. Okay, warmed to it more. Judd, Chris is hired to run a game for X weeks, so the TPK has to figure out another way to fulfill his contract. No, he does. It's shorter sessions. Its campaign sessions are are short. I mean, and Wizards of the Coast says that. Wizards of the Coast has listed that as one of their problems is that campaign sessions only last about 6 weeks. And then the players either roll new characters up or they just stop playing it and they move on to something else or whatever. But it's part of the reason why they have a Dungeon Master shortage, which Chris Perkins does not address in this whole thing at all, which I think is was a missed opportunity. So let me see where we're going to jump to. I actually only have 2 more points that I was going to go to. So 4701. So let's jump to 4701. We might even be close to that. Oh, I'm almost there. I'm going to just let this run.
Yeah.
Question, how do I become a better DM? A, watch other DMs. B, eat your broccoli. C, build a better game table. Or D, steal Matthew Mercer's mojo.
I don't know. Like, you should have green vegetables. I know that now that I'm older, but I think stealing Matt Mercer's mojo, I would be irresponsible to condone taking his mojo. That's his mojo. Find your own. So I kind of feel like watching other Dungeon Masters is really inspiring. So I think that's your best option, really.
I would agree with you. I would even go farther to say that, artists learn by appreciating other artists' work. Writers get better by reading other writers and seeing what they do well and what they don't. I think the same is true for DMs. If you watch other DMs, you can learn from them. You can say, oh, I like what this DM does in this situation. Oh, I love how this other DM keeps the plot moving, or I love how this other DM sort of embraces the characters' backgrounds and backstories and uses that as fuel for adventures. So I heartily encourage the watching of other DMs.
The other point he didn't make here that he should have was that, watching other DMs, I guess, is fine. But the other better solution, I think, is to also play other systems and play other game systems as well. So that's important, I think, as something that should be that should have been mentioned. Was don't just now. I understand he's not going to be able to do that or say that, but it's much better advice than just saying, oh, just watch other DMs running 5e. No, watch other DMs running other game systems if you're not going to run them yourself. And the last point I'm going to go to is 49, mark 49th minute.
Experiencing them by watching them, I saw, oh, I never want to do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Question, how do I know if I'm doing a good job as DM? A, you're having fun.
Yeah.
B, your players are having fun. C, y'all can't wait to play again. D, you did everything Chris Perkins told you to do.
I'm gonna say, well, I'll always say what you did, what Chris Perkins told you to do. But yeah, I mean, I think you're gonna have days as a dungeon master where you didn't feel like you did a good job, or maybe you didn't have fun because you don't feel that way, but your players clearly did have fun and loved the adventure. I've had that happen. If you are having fun, you did a good job. If they're having fun and you're stressed out, you still did a good job. If they listen to you, I feel like they've been doing a good job.
I actually ruled out the last one. I don't think it's actually important that
fair.
You do everything I tell you to do, because I am just one DM
exactly
offering some advice. I am not to be trusted completely.
Okay, I just had to shift over to headset. I know you might be getting some background conversation, so hopefully that'll stop soon. But yeah, so I mean, bottom line is that, and I know it's very cliche at this point when people say, "Oh, it's as long as everyone's having fun." But I mean, bottom line, that's really important. If you know, but when they say, as long as everyone is having fun, that includes the dungeon master, that includes the game master. But there's also there should be some adherence to some of the basic rules of the game as well. Otherwise, you're not playing the game. You're doing something. You're doing something else. Um, so that's really important to factor in as well. Is so yes, it's important that everyone is having fun. Um, Having some fidelity to the game system is also important. Otherwise, why play that game system if you're not going to be showing that fidelity to it? So I'm gonna. So that was pretty much my overview of everything in there. Like I said, I pointed out about 14 or 15 or so points in the in the interview that he had. Like I said, I tried to just focus in on what really struck me as being important. Now, I encourage you to watch the whole thing. You might find other points that you thought were more important that I didn't bring up, and that's perfectly fine as well. Let's see what some other comments are in here. Uh, so this is when we were talking about, or he was talking about. Well, let's just see. That's why Schwab made Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign short. Average campaign, as per a survey, was 10 to 12 sessions maximum. So it went with a 10th level cap. I mean, geez, if you're getting to 10th level in just 10 to 12 sessions, it must be milestone leveling, which I don't like. But hey, if that's what they have, that's what they have. But I personally am not a fan of milestone leveling for the reason that I don't see how you develop a character um, in just 10 sessions, and especially if you're going up that many levels that quickly. You're always looking at your character sheet. I mean, you got to live off that character sheet when you're playing, because you're constantly having to refresh your memory of what your character is actually capable of doing. Um, so yeah, I would not think that that's very good. For me, that's a reason not to play Demon Lord, Shadow of the Demon Lord, because that if that's what their game system is written towards, then no, I wouldn't do it. Read better books, possibly. Let's see. Hey, Nostromo. I'm not sure, unfortunately, what point you were saying was insightful. Um, let's see. You have to be curious about things. Better DM. I've always been drawn to the study of warfare through the ages, but that leads directly to understanding contemporary life and culture. Okay. And who does that Canadian think he is? Oh, I guess you're talking about Schwab. Um, nope, I don't want to talk to. I don't want to mention him. Let's see. Both sides have to enjoy it. If you are miserable but entertaining, it won't last. Absolutely. Yeah, everyone at the table needs to have needs to be having fun. Otherwise, it won't last. It'll fall apart. And let's see, fidelity, good word. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you do have to have some fidelity to the game system. Otherwise, you're not playing. And that's directly from Gary Gygax too. When Gary Gygax said, it's okay to change certain things, in the game. However, if you change so much or you change those things that he considered to be essential, then you're no longer playing Dungeons and Dragons, you're playing something else. So certain level of fidelity to the game system is important. Well, that's why I moved this one, Cal, to 9 o'clock start time. But you know what? I mean, you're right. There's too many live streams going on. I only do a live stream like once every 2 weeks, and I do it once a week. Just one day on the week, and um, no one is, and nor will they probably ever try to coordinate and say this day is yours and so forth. Some people only do live streams, so I wouldn't expect them to say, hey, I'm going to give up Thursdays for, Rich to come on or someone else or whatever. So, it is what it is. Go to the ones that you like the most, I guess. And I certainly appreciate you being here. But if you have to run to another one, that's fine too. The most important thing to being a better GM is talking to your players. Yeah, to a certain extent, that's true also. You have to have good communication. So it's not just talking to your players, but your players have to talk to you as well. So good communication across the board is very important to have. Again, I don't know who, but you need your lawyer present with your players. Yeah, especially with these new consent things that they have, and like the newest D&D hardback has a baked into the system before your player characters are turned to mind flayers. You have to double check to make sure that all the players are accepting of that. They have to give consent for that to happen. Otherwise, they can forgo the change and still get the mechanical benefits of the change, or the without actually having to assume that their character was actually transformed into a mind flayer. Now you might just need more mature players that can handle that kind of thing. I kind of like it's kind of funny because they call it body horror. So changing appearance um, from one gender or one race to another is considered body horror. I wonder if they're putting that connection together. I don't think they intend it to be that perception of it, but hey, it's their words, not mine. But I didn't buy her. All right, sometimes it's hard to follow the conversation going a little bit disconnected. Flint Fireforge. Evening. How are you, Flint? You're coming in kind of late, so unfortunately, we have already finished up going through the entire video, or at least the portions of the video response to. This was my response to The Secrets of D&D Dungeon Mastering with Chris Perkins. And ultimately, what we were kind of looking for from it is, how do you become a better game or dungeon master? So that's where we're kind of at this point. Chris Perkins, that guy in the video we just watched, is Canadian. Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that Chris Perkins is Canadian, and he's 55. All right, so then he's old enough to have played, first edition, or yeah, I'm only 56, and I played Holmes in 1970, 77, 78, somewhere in there. Um, so yeah, so he's certainly old enough to have played in the earlier editions of D&D. Although I don't get the sense that I think he was still a latecomer. Um, okay, yeah, and it will post later, Flint, so you'll be able to catch everything. Um, these things take about an hour or so to post on there, so you will be able to catch that. Let's see. I got you. What's a Canadian doing saying, y'all? People stealing our culture. Yeah, it's cultural appropriation. And here we go. Well, of course, I mean, yeah, that's his employer. So, and I don't think where else is he going to go to if he did leave, Hasbro and WotC. I guess he could run to Paizo. There seems to be a lot of exchange between people working for one and then the other, and back and forth and left to right. They're essentially the same kind of philosophy, whether it's Paizo or WotC. So they're kind of in the same, token of, you know, same side of the same coin, let's say. I just paint minis while you watch. Yes, which is something I have to get back to doing, is painting my minis as well. I've been working on the same orc that's behind me for 6 months and just haven't gotten to the next stage. Uh, yep, some responses are funny. Absolutely. GM advice is 70% pablum or repetition, but I still love reading and watching it. It's like panning for gold. Yeah, yeah, you're gonna get little bits of nuggets and everything. Like I said, I mean, in this 53-minute interview, I probably picked up, 5 things that, I agreed with. And I probably found like 4 or 5 things that I was absolutely like, no, that's not, just absolute disagreement with. And then some that are kind of here or there. Um, I mean, Todd uh, Hendrick is just such a suck up with everybody that he interviews. It's almost a waste for him to even be there, because he tries to give the answer they're looking for instead of, um, and just some of those things. That he knows the questions ahead of time, and they're both, because those are silly questions that are coming up, and some of the answers are silly. So that's the other thing. It's almost performative. The interview is performative, which is a problem. I think it's not informative, or not very informative, or as informative as it should be. Well, thank you. Take it easy, Cal. All right, and I hope Todd knew the questions those slides were used at Comic-Con and Gen Con this year. He mentioned that they tweaked them and developed them over time. So this was like the final distillation of the other two, but it's probably not even true. They probably haven't tweaked them very much. And like I said, the answers were, when we didn't need these coy or silly answers as throwaway answers. It's we're here to watch and get become informed. So I don't know who that's catering to. Maybe I'm just too old for it, and cynical for it to cater to me, but it's I think it's a waste of time to do that and to have that in there. Yeah, eat your broccoli. I mean, seriously, it's like we're not. You're looking to talk to people who are going to be running the game. So throwing these childish little answers at them is kind of a, you know, I mean, I was more mature than that when I was 11, or 12 when I first started, game mastering. So it's kind of silly. No, they don't because they're only interviewed um by a friendly voice. And so they're not going to go on to a channel that is and I don't blame them for that, but they're not going to go to a channel that is specifically um adversarial to them, or even just not a absolute sycophant towards them either. They're going to go to the shills to do their interviews. Um, oh, let's see if I missed something here. Yeah, to my knowledge, no one yeah. Um, yeah, but that's a totally different thing. Yeah, shareholder calls are going to be adversarial, are always adversarial, because shareholders have one concern: how come you're not making us more money? Hmm. Yeah, yeah, Judd. Um, yeah, I don't mind initiative, trackers and those kinds of things. But if everyone's paying attention, they kind of know who's going when and whatnot. So it shouldn't be that complicated. Um, where was he tore apart? I don't think he was tore apart on streams that he wasn't on. He wasn't tore apart on any interview. No one interviewed him that tore him apart. Absolutely not. Um, when he went on, who did he go to? He went to Jenny D. Yeah, Jenny D is gonna tear him apart. Absolutely not. She knows who butters her bread, and he didn't go on. I don't think Nerdarchy interviewed him. I mean, he did interviews where he knew he was going to get softball or nonsense questions. So yeah, he was not torn apart. They didn't tear him apart on the things, L, that he brought up. They didn't challenge him on the, white men need to get out. They can't get out quick enough. Men that look like me can't get out quick enough. They didn't challenge him on that because they agreed with it. So they didn't push back on him on anything that he said that was truly negative. They um they were along the same thing. And how many subs did they have? They had like 1,500 subs at the time. So he went to a channel that no one's ever heard of, and we know exactly why he went on that channel. Um, because it was going to be a very low impact. At least he assumed it was going to be a low impact, and it wasn't what they pushed back on. And if you go to that video and you look at how they handle things in the chat, um, of that, um, they were like, "Oh no, we're not gonna ask that question. We're not gonna push on that. We're not going to," because they agreed with it. So they pushed back on the idea of, why didn't you challenge him on this? Yes, it's true. He was not. He was a sacrificial lamb. He's not on the scale with Perkins. If they threw Perkins out there, Perkins would have done a better job of it. Perkins might have actually, but they wanted somebody that wasn't on the development team either, because from what I understand, there was a lot of disagreement between the actual creators, the actual writers and such, and the suits. And Kyle Brink is a suit. He's not a game designer. He's not a writer or and everything. He's just a suit. Um, their other guy, I forget his name, the one that was a real culprit in the whole thing, um, was would have been far worse than Brink. The other guy is just straight up ass. So yeah, that would have been terrible if that guy came out. I forget who he was. He was kind of like the um yes, um this guy's a jerk, an absolute jerk. I think it's just one O, cow, or however you pronounce it. But yeah, he's like a corporate hatchet man kind of thing, or like a shop steward kind of thing, but without any actual knowledge of game development. I'll be back in 1 second. Okay, I'm back. Let's see. Let's see. Okay. No, you didn't, Judd. I could turn on the ceiling fan. So, that's pretty much it. Like I said, my take on the video was, overall, I I was surprised. I was surprised at how much better he is at actually talking about gaming, and whether it's game design or game mastery, than Jeremy Crawford is. That's for sure. And like I said, even though I disagreed with him on several points, he made a few points that I was like, yeah, I do that too. So let's see. I'd like to see a reputable OSR game designer and Chris Perkins have a chat, not necessarily a debate between old and new mechanics and DM practices. Yeah, I'd like to see any of those people go on a channel that is going to, not drill down on them like a maniac, but certainly press them on certain issues, and I particularly would go at them over like the disclaimer that's on drive-through and the statements that you notice that Chris Perkins usually is the one that comes in to try to clean up Jeremy Crawford's statements, because Jeremy Crawford is just somebody who shouldn't be on the camera. He shouldn't be interviewed because he just says stupid things. And then Perkins has to come in and kind of correct what he said, or try to do damage control on what he said. All right, that's a side conversation. Can you find her? Oh, sure, there's plenty. There's plenty. You have the designer for if Trollord Games. Those guys are great designers. Very very comfortable in talking about game design and stuff. Yeah, so maybe Stephen Chenault, as I literally just said it. Stephen Chenault, absolutely. Or Alexander Macris, or people that that are really good. Matt Finch. I mean, Matt Finch is probably leagues beyond them. All right. Kevin Crawford is another one, but like I said, I think Matt Finch probably knows more, far more than either of those two. Well, certainly more than Jeremy Crawford's not even a comparison, but more than Perkins. Yeah, it's not it's not OSR designers that are currently going back and forth. It's just us content creators on YouTube and such that go back and forth, and not even so much us. There's only a couple that actually go into all of that that kind of thing. But designers, no, designers are busy designing as they should be, just like Stephen Chenault said on Twitter 2 months ago or whatever. It's like, no, we're just here to make games. We don't want to get involved in this stuff. We're just here to make games. We're here to make good games, and that's it. We're a gaming company. Yes, I know that Labyrinth Lord sent a CND to Greg Gillespie, and Greg Gillespie basically put his comment out there that it was like Labyrinth Lord second edition isn't even out yet, so how can you claim that I took anything from you? So streamers, maybe a better term. Yeah. I refuse to call them influencers. No, none of us are influencers. There are none any, because who exactly are we influencing? I don't think anybody. Yeah, so we're not influencers. You might have some influencers that are. I mean, I hate that term too. It sounds so, it sounds so teeny bopperish and TikTok more so than it is. In our kind of circles. OSR designers are fighting pundit versus TBE. From what I understand, the basic expert is making his first game. So is he really a designer? I mean, Pundit at least has, produced quite a bit, including working on 5e. But, so I wouldn't say that's exactly a clash of the titans of game designers. He's perpetually at war. I prefer grifters. Not all streamers are saying, "Give me money." Yep. Is it really? I had no idea that's his third game. Oh yeah, no, he has what, Cow Punchers? Is Cow Punchers his? Yes, he does have Cow Punchers. You're correct. I forgot about that. And another before it. And I've heard good things about Cow Punchers actually. But is Cow Punchers just like is that a BX? So post-apocalyptic as well. Atomic Punk. All right. Yeah, no, I forgot about Cow Punchers. Yes, he does have that out there. But is he really feuding? I don't think that he's really feuding with anyone. I think that, I think that he was more just responding or whatever. But again, I don't get too much into it. So you played Cow Punchers at VentureCon. I would love to get to a VentureCon just to be able to say it, but haven't gotten. There's no way I'm getting to Wisconsin for anything. So it's just too far and too complicated to get there, too expensive to get there. Good. Yeah, sounds good. Aztec Cow Punchers. What is it with Dungeons and Mexican games? Mexican games. Well, at least it's not like Coyote and Crow or whatever the hell it's called. It starts tomorrow, ShireCon. I am running. I'm running Weird Frontiers. Just to remind everyone. So I am running an adaptation of The Horror on the Mound, which is a Robert E. Howard story from published in Weird Tales in 1932, and looking forward to it. I have a few things I got to tweak tomorrow morning, but I have everything pretty much all set up for it, and have a couple pre-gens that I want to create for it. I got to double check and see if my table is still pretty much full. So let me actually double check that real quick and see that my table is, last time I checked, I had 4 out of 5. It was 5 out of 5 at some point. So someone might have dropped out. And yep, it's still 4 out of 5. So I have 4 players all set up for it. And I know at least, I believe 2 of the individuals, one of the individuals I'm actually playing in his game on Saturday. So one of my players is going to be my GM the next day. So I'm looking forward to that. So, yep, I have 4 out of 5 players. And that just means I only need to create maybe 10 pre-gens. So tighten those up and finish up with 10 pre-gens tomorrow. And then I'll have it all ready to go. That's in Michigan, I believe. Biggest Geekest Con Is in Michigan, correct? I'm pretty sure it's Michigan. Can't get out there either. Too far. Yeah, so I'm strictly local. So yep. So Michigan. Yeah, so if you can get out to Michigan next weekend is Biggest Geek is gone. All right. All right, everybody, I am going to wrap this up. So thanks for everyone that dropped in. I hope you enjoyed the coverage of the video and the response. Elle, thanks for the suggestion to take a look at it. You know, I actually thought, I don't know if you can always start one, Judd, if that's where you're at. Actually, my niece lives in Atlanta too, but she's a 5e DM, and I'm waiting to give her a copy of Shadow Dark when I get my physical copies in hand. So, Dragon Con, yeah, there's got to be some in the Atlanta, you know, or Georgia area. There's got to be, and it's not too far, I would think, from like Ozark Con, which is in Arkansas, but it's not terribly far. And I think Troll Lord Games is going to do TrollCon sometime next year as well. And they probably do that often anyway. So, and I know that Troll Lord Games is going to be at several other bigger cons like in Ohio and whatnot. So there's quite a few coming up that you know, it is essentially con season right now. So getting into September, October, and then there's a slew of them, like starting again in like April and May, and so April, May, June, July. So those tend to be the con seasons. March, I should have mentioned March, April, May, and through to June. They kind of drop off in early July and very, very few in August or September, generally speaking. All right, everyone, thanks for popping in, and you all have a great weekend coming up, and I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen or at a convention table sometime soon. Have a good night.